hasten this meeting, but I got somewhere else. But
Okay.
No issues.
Yeah, I've not eaten yet, so
No
we're good.
issues.
okay, I'd like to call to order the January 12th Ordinance Committee meeting. Do we have any public comment?
No, sir.
There being none, we'll proceed to agenda adoption. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a move to adopt the agenda and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're here this evening to review the noise ordinance. And as we're aware, back in August 11th, we had a very brief discussion and did not move forward at that time. But since that time, we've had some complaints and so forth that's come before the town. And so we're here to address that. And I'm going to let our town manager, Mr. Talbert, give us some insight on that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, we've had some additional concerns with our noise ordinance. We also have, as you know, some additional development taking place. Our ordinance is structured so, and let me back up and say I did consult our attorneys on this because I wanted to see how the state addressed noise. The answer I got from my attorney, or our attorneys, was that don't worry so much about the state code. There's not that much there about it, but what we should be worried about is staying within bounds of the latest state Supreme Court case, which I believe was Tanner was the name. I sent them a copy of our current noise ordinance, and their reaction to our noise ordinance was that it is the newer version of what was passed and what most everybody's trying to pass after the Tanner case. And apparently the Tanner case involved a complaint of noise where there weren't any measurements taken, and it was a matter of someone's perception as to whether the noise was too loud or not. The state Supreme Court pretty much says you have to file criminal charges against somebody and prosecute that person for a criminal act. You have to have some standard, and that was the Supreme Court's decision, and that's what our attorneys were trying to tell us. If you're going to do that criminally, you have to have some sort of standard, a viable standard, a recognizable standard, in order to have evidence enough to prosecute somebody. Then he sent me a proposed ordinance that the city of Virginia Beach is dealing with right now, and what their answer to that is, and they have a similar, part of their ordinance is similar to ours, in that they have decibel readings for night and day, commercial and residential, just like we do and many other communities do. The chart that I gave you indicates that. But the newest part of their proposed ordinance, and by the way, they have not adopted it yet that I'm aware of, the newest part of their proposed ordinance goes back to a standard that is, quote unquote, plainly audible sound. But the violation of that plainly audible standard is a civil penalty rather than a criminal penalty. And in the email that I sent the council concerning this, there was a link there that went to a Virginia Beach council meeting in which their town attorney or their city attorney got up and explained this, and it was a very good explanation. I wish I could recall it all, but that's the gist of it. They've gone and added a civil violation as well as criminal. Their criminal violation is still the standard with the decibel meter and the things, just like our in fact, it's very close to our current ordinance. But the standards for their civil violation are in the, and I gave you the Virginia Beach proposed ordinance. And it basically goes back to the plainly audible. It defines plainly audible as meaning any sound or noise that can be heard by the human ear with or without a hearing aid. Specific words or phrases need not be discernible, and the detection of bass reverberations is sufficient to constitute a plainly audible sound. The sound must not be so faint that its source cannot be identified, and that's the way it describes plainly audible. The police still enforce this. It's still complaint-based. And it even makes dedicates a special section here that says that police can, in any instance, give a warning rather than a violation. So, if they arrive and say you need to turn your noise down or your stereo down or whatever, and you turn it down, case closed, there's no other issue. But then it goes on to present specific prohibitions, and I'm not going to read all this to you, but several of them are for really anything that makes noise. And the standard for several of them is either 100 feet or more from the direction of the noise source between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. or at a distance of 50 feet or more from the direction of the operator between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., in other words, overnight. And of course, times can vary. But it also requires in a dwelling for the officer to actually go inside the house and observe the noise for himself. It makes an effort to say that when the officer goes inside the house, and it says inside the confines of another person's enclosed dwelling, and they take that to mean doors and windows are closed. Okay, I went back and checked that
Right,
after
yeah.
Robbie and I had a discussion today.
Yeah.
And they address loudspeakers, radios, TVs, musical instruments, stereos, anything with an amplifier, just singing, voice, vehicle horns, signaling devices. They address fireworks and make provisions for a city-issued fireworks permit. They address parties, social gatherings, in a residential neighborhood only. They don't address parties in a commercial neighborhood. They address loud mufflers, construction equipment, although we don't seem to have much of a problem with that. Animals, dogs barking, and Robbie has a famous instance of where the judge threw out dog barking because he said dogs bark. That's what they do. A commercial trash vehicle dumping a dumpster, that can trip this ordinance, and grass cutting between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., which admittedly doesn't happen very often. So it covers a multitude of things. And then it goes into the criminal violations again, and again, that part of their ordinance is very similar to ours. So that's what our attorney sent us to take a look at and consider and mull over. And Rob and I talked about this today, and certainly we're not going to have an ordinance to recommend to the council after this night's meeting, but what we would like is a direction from the committee on what to go and what to pursue, so that we know what to gather, what to write in a proposed ordinance to give you to review, so that you might recommend and maybe tweak it up and get it like you want it. Or if you don't want to change it all, we just like you to give us a direction.
Yeah.
What is the chief noise complaint? Is it bars and music?
Yes.
Mainly from commercial places? Do you have any from residential? Much?
Complaints
Yeah,
from
complaints
residential.
back in residential?
Yeah, we've got, just like, part of the problem that Mike and I talked about is, you've got commercial businesses with residential areas
Right.
surrounding them.
Right. So, I guess what I'm asking is the chief complaint is usually because of a commercial
Yes.
entity is creating the
Right.
noises?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any instances where you get a complaint that somebody at a residence is doing, or is it very few?
Very few more, but, we usually have a few in the summertime.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If, families are here on vacation, wherever, they're
Mhm.
having a little party or something outside, or, that can be not common, but,
Right.
more common during the summertime than in the wintertime.
Right. And when you go to these commercial places and say, we've had a complaint, turn it down, do they normally comply?
Normally, yes. And of course, the way our law is written now,
Mm-hmm.
that, that warning is good for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
If we have to go back within 30 days for the same complaint, and we take a reading, and they're in violation, then they get a summons issued to them.
Has that happened? That
It
you've
has.
been back there in 30 days? Okay.
Yes. It has.
Does the proposed draft that we have here, or not proposed, but the draft that we have from Virginia Beach, does that in itself, I mean, we're saying that's still, that draft is a complaint-based draft as well?
It doesn't specifically say that, and I'm sure that, since it doesn't say that the officer, if he observes it, could initiate it. But ours is currently, if I'm not mistaken, complaint-based, right, Rob?
Right.
So they don't respond to noise unless, well, I'm sure they would if it was overwhelmingly loud, but they don't normally respond to noise complaints, or address noise complaints unless there's a complaint.
Yeah. On that, section 2365 of that draft, that you provided to us, under, C, it says whenever an authorized enforcement officer has reason to believe that a violation of any provision of this article has occurred and may reoccur, such officer may give notice to the violation to the person operating, permitting, or controlling a source, and it goes on and on. Could that be construed by people that the police themselves can?
Yes.
And-
Absolutely.
and-
Again, and theirs obviously says this, ours is complaint-based. They don't respond normally unless there's a complaint.
I think that I asked, probably in that August meeting, I think I asked Robbie, do you all just ever ride by and you hear it really loud, do you just get out and take a reading? And,
Not usually.
right,
Because most of the time, the meters are here at the office.
right.
So if we get a complaint, then we come here and get a meter and go out. It's not good to keep them in the car with the temperatures,
That's
you know.
it.
Yeah, plus the.
And there's a lot of things that have to go on in regards to certifying that piece of device.
Yes.
And, I mean, it's a whole
Yes,
log of
has to be-
stuff that you
Has
have.
to be sent to the company and annually, and, check calibration on it and stuff, so,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's not cheap,
Yeah.
so.
So I guess I'm still a little fuzzy on making the determination whether something's light enough and whether the police department themselves can approach without having to, given the authority to do something without getting a meter reading, per se, you know. Is in your reading of this draft again, is it implied in that draft? I guess I'm just seeing some stuff, some fuzzy stuff going in this draft that, I want to make
Well,
sure.
again, the sample, it's just that, it's a sample, it's something for you to look at. It may give you some ideas of what you might want to do or do nothing. And I gave you ours to compare it to so you could see. But it's helpful, I always find it's helpful to see what everybody else is doing, because in my opinion, somebody's always got a solution. If it's not me, I'll find who does it and copy what they do, I'm not proud.
Right, sure, yeah.
But ours is complaint-based. I mean, same thing with our nuisance ordinance. We don't respond to nuisances unless there's a complaint. We don't ride by and say, hey, your grass is, well, we do grass, but we don't ride by and say, hey, you've got bamboo growing on your neighbor's property, so we're going to fine you. We wait till the neighbor calls us and says he's got bamboo growing on the property. So you can do basically whichever you'd like, or both. You can say it's going to be complaint-based unless the officer observes it way over the top, in which case he's allowed to act if he feels that way. I mean, you can do what you want to do. Nothing prevents you from doing either.
How many noise complaints did you have last year?
Gosh, I have no idea right off the top of my head. I have to look it up. I'll get you that information now.
Are most of the noise complaints centralized around town and such, or?
Most of them, I would say, last year came from 2 establishments, now 2 commercial establishments. Yeah. The biggest majority of them. And what I was going to touch on with Mike, I believe you know I've been around forever. And I believe when this was originally written, I think Mr. Polson was the one that wrote this, and the judge at the time had basically said that the way he saw it, we were out here doing a job. If somebody's making noise, it's not bothering us. So he didn't feel like we should be the ones to go up and, I can compare this to like if you have a house out in the middle of nowhere and you want to make all the noise you want, you're not bothering anybody else. What right should the police or anybody else have to come there and tell you that, hey, you got to cut it down? I think that's more of the way he was seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was why it was placed into our current ordinance, that we have a complaint base. It's not bothering us just riding around. We want to make sure that it's, bothering somebody else.
I guess the way I feel about it all is because there is a lot of information in here. But if our current ordinance is working for the most part, what I would like to see, and maybe this is already so, I'm looking for it in here. If they get a complaint and they go to an establishment or a residence and give them the warning or whatever, and if it happens again in 30 days, within 30 days, you give them a fine, right?
Right.
Well, how much is that fine?
Well, we don't give them a fine. We issue a summons and they go before a judge, and if the judge finds them guilty, then they're given a fine. I believe it's $250.
Okay, I see it right there. Okay. We have no say-so in the fine thing, or no?
It's in the ordinance.
I see that, but we have no say-so I'm looking at.
I'm guessing because if you look into Virginia Beach's ordinance, their fine at first is considered a Class 2 misdemeanor, and any subsequent offense is a Class 1 misdemeanor. Class 1 misdemeanor is a big
fine.
That's up to 12 months in jail and
So
$5,000.
Mike, this page 8, I guess it is. This civil penalties for violation of noise ordinances 15.2-980. Is that ours? Any locality may by ordinance adopt a uniform schedule of penalties.
That's
That's straight
state
from,
law.
that's straight from the state
State
code.
law.
And that's one of the few things I could find in the state code concerning noise, which is why I contacted our attorney. I said, help me out with this. You know the state code. I said, we obviously, this subject's coming up in our ordinance committee. I said, we have to stay within bounds of state code, so help me out and find this. Is when he sent back in the response saying, you don't worry about state code. You need to comply with what the Supreme Court said concerning measuring noise.
All right. So we have other ordinances that we impose the penalty, right? Or no?
You're talking about a civil violation now. If my understanding, Robbie's the expert on this, but my understanding is if it's a criminal violation, the judge is going to pass sentencing or
Right.
whatever the fine is going to be.
Well, this here from the state says civil penalties.
A civil penalty, is it a set fine?
No.
No?
I mean, the judge can pretty much, it's all based on state law.
What I'm trying to get to here is if we have a complaint and you go back again within 30 days, do we have any power to say this, you're going to pay X amount of dollars?
Well,
the
right
judge
here by
take
this.
Consideration of that, or take that into consideration, I guess, is what you're asking.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, the
You
judge
know-
is the one that's gonna set the fine, of course. On right now, on the way we have it set up, on any violation, because we can only charge criminally. We can't charge civilly.
okay.
So we can only charge criminally, so any fine is gonna be up to the judge.
I guess what I would like to see is that we make it so that they're not going to want to violate.
Well, that's why I asked our attorney for the state law, because the judge, I don't think the judge will exceed what the state code says you can do, which in this case, you can see right here, $250 for the first offense and $500 for each subsequent offense. So if you violate 15 times, you're still only going to get $500.
Yeah.
And I believe,
What gets you there is that how often you can apply that reoccurring, for, that reoccurring instance. And I think Virginia Beaches is hourly on their civil. Every hour that you exceed is another violation, so that's another $500, another $500.
Yeah, so,
Or $250.
so do we have the power to say, you get a warning the first time, if we come back again 2 days later,
Yes.
instead of the 30-day thing?
According to the sample ordinance,
Uh,
yes, they give them that power. In fact, they said, you can give them a warning, but you don't have to. You can violate them the first time. And then each subsequent time, you can give them another violation. And they define the reoccurrence as every hour.
I think maybe that's the way we should go, maybe it would,
I believe what you're talking about is Virginia Beach's part is doing here in the criminal violations, page 16. That's where I said, if you look, any person who commits, permits, or assists in any violation of section 23-67 of this article, whether by act or omission, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor as follows. The first violation by such person shall constitute a class 2 misdemeanor. The second violation and any subsequent committed is a class 1 misdemeanor. That's putting teeth in your law,
Oh, yeah.
to me, because not many people are going to want to be convicted of a class 1 misdemeanor.
Agreed.
That could affect your jobs
Yeah.
and so forth.
well,
So
I
I think that's what Virginia Beach
As
is
well as
answering.
license.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I would like to see us do away with our, all right, you get a warning, and if we come back within 30 days, then you get something. I would like to see us, we've come there, we give you a warning. If we come back again, no matter what time, day, hour, week, day, 2 weeks, you get, here's your penalty, or here's your
Well,
violation.
the way our ordinance reads, if I'm not mistaken, Robin, the way our ordinance reads, if we show up at an event at 7 p.m. and say your noise is, you're too loud, your decimal reading is way high, you're too loud, you need to turn it down, and they turn it down. If we come back at 9 o'clock, that's the second occurrence, isn't it? Or if we say
Our
it's a,
ordinance now, to my knowledge, does not delineate anything, any time limit. I mean, if we go there and tell them to turn it down, and then we get another call 30 minutes later, or 15 minutes later,
So,
and we go take another measurement,
so where did
and
the
it's a
30
violation.
day, if we come back to you in the 30
well,
day come from?
if the 30
That's in
days,
the ordinance.
if the 30 days expires after you give them
Yeah.
a warning and you don't have any other occurrences,
then we have to give them another
you have to
one.
give another warning.
So
See,
maybe,
I think we need to do away with that part.
or at least maybe 90 days, where it's longer than just a month.
That would cover the tourist season.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Which is when you get the majority of them.
You have one warning per season.
Your dispatcher just sent me a text, 47 noise complaints
Okay.
in 2022. So overall, I guess that's not bad. Yeah, I would like to see a more of a harsher,
Yeah.
And
or make them realize, hey, we got to do,
I can see, and Mike and I talked about this, I can see both of these working pretty good because, a lot of people are not going to want to pay $500 a crack, if we're just going there and give them a civil, doing it as a civil penalty. $500 is a second offense and then a subsequent offense. So I mean, that's going to start hitting them in the pocketbook, after a while. And then also with the criminal side, like I said, class 2 misdemeanor is bad enough, you start hitting rank class 1s,
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I'd like to extend the time period, definitely.
yeah.
I don't think that would violate or go against anything in the state code, so.
In 90 days is an unreasonable amount of time.
No,
yeah.
because I guarantee you, there's a couple places.
yeah, they're just going to try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how do you decide whether it's a civil or a criminal?
My thoughts on this, and I'm not for sure, Virginia Beach is, of course, a larger,
Right.
a lot larger area than we are. I know how much these instruments cost. I doubt Virginia Beach has an instrument in every car.
Right.
You know, and I'm thinking that they're probably, and I could be totally wrong on this because I haven't talked with anybody, but just after I've gone over this myself, I'm thinking that they probably more or less leave it up to an officer's discretion. You know, if it's the first time, you know, or if they haven't had many complaints or whatever, then they'll probably hit them with a civil penalty. If they go there 2 or 3 times and they're in that $500 range and they're still doing it, that's probably when they come back and say, okay, well, we're going to get a noise meter now and we're going to take you to criminal court.
Mm-hmm.
That's my guess. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Are we allowed to put that in an ordinance?
Oh, well, yeah, Virginia Beach is doing it.
You know,
Well,
first
that's
time
so-
civil, second time
And,
criminal?
and just like the law that you quoted that Mike had in here,
Uh-huh.
that gives you, that says it's a civil penalty.
Right.
So that gives you the right to, you know, to charge a civil penalty.
And I'd like to add too, that if you look at this, and again, this is a sample, it's something to look at, not something we're suggesting, it's just to give you some ideas. But if you look at the criteria for the civil violation, it's a much lower threshold than it is for a criminal violation.
Right.
Criminal violation, you gotta exceed 65 decibels during the day, and what is it, 75 during the day, 55 during the day.
No.
65 during the day, 55 at night, yeah. But the threshold for a civil violation is much lower in that you can be in your front yard with your grass cutter on at 11 p.m. and your neighbor call you in, you get a civil fine. You know, and of course, that's probably not exceeding the 50, 65 nighttime, or 55 nighttime decibels, but you're keeping your neighbor up, so. So that's something else to consider, that the way this is written, and you don't have to write it that way, but the way this is written, the civil violation is at a much lower threshold.
I have no issues with the way our ordinance is
Me
written,
either.
with the exception of I'd like to see the 30 extended to 90.
Yeah.
And I would like to see the first time you go there, or first time you issue a violation be civil, and then if you got to go back again, criminal. I would say hopefully hey, we gotta straighten up. That's what I would like to see.
Do we want that across the board as far as residential to
Well, I thought about
commercial?
that too, you know. I don't know how you could differentiate.
Yeah.
Probably most of your noise complaints from residential is coming from vacation homes, I would think. You know, they don't know what's going on, you know, but you got these commercials that are out here doing it every day, every night.
So in that case, is the property owner responsible for that noise, say seaside rental, or whatever?
If the property owner is not there, no. It's whoever's in charge
That's who your issue.
of,
Yeah.
you know, that if they have if it's a commercial property and they have a manager there, you know, the property owner's not there, the manager is there, then that's who receives the summons.
It makes a specific reference to whoever seems to be in control or in charge. It's fancy language, but that's what it means. If you show up and, well, the owner's not here, we have a manager, well, the manager's not here, who's your head waitress? You know, that's the one that's gonna get the penalty. Whoever seems to be supervising or controlling the operation or controlling the sound is the one that's gonna get violation. And it says, this one, and again, it's a sample, says they can violate any or all of the supervisors or people in that who are controlling it. So if there's partners there, both of them will get it. You know, both owners are on site, and both want to get it, or can get it.
Well, I guess I was referring also to like a rental property. The people there who rented that property
making the
from
noise.
somebody else that's making the noise.
Right.
They're the ones that can be charged as well, rather than
Yes.
well,
Yes, sir.
can the property owners be charged as well?
Not if they're not there.
Okay.
Not under our existing.
Or the property manager, who may be wherever, on the island somewhere.
I think that would be hard to do,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like, the house across the street from me, well, every week there's somebody new in there. Well,
Mhm.
1 week this person might violate it, 3 weeks from now someone else might violate it.
And it's not really that person's fault that's renting the house.
Right.
No.
That they're
Right.
violating.
No.
Yeah.
You know, they could have rules posted in there, and
Yeah.
tell them, what they can and can't do,
Yeah.
but you know, just like this, we've got rules and,
I would say if the majority of our complaints, which I'm gonna go out on a limb unless you tell me anything different, Robbie, is that the majority of those 47
47.
complaints came from commercial businesses.
yes.
And I think that's where we need to apply the teeth.
I agree. Okay, do you have, what other information would you need?
Are you all interested in this other part about the criminal? With actually putting teeth in it?
Well, I would
I
like
think-
to, I would like to see your first violation is civil, and then if you go back again, then it's criminal.
But that's fine, but I'm saying with their punishment of a class 2 or a class 1 misdemeanor.
Who's
Because
punishing?
see, right now, under our,
Virginia Beach?
Yeah.
under ours, it's just left up to the judge. So if he wants to, you know, give them a $50 fine,
Right.
Oh, no, I think there needs to be some teeth in it. If you're gonna charge them criminally, then,
All right, so to, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So the direction we're hearing from the committee is, we would like to see the warning, a violation every 30 days extended to every 90 days. That the first violation given, which means the second time that the officers would be there for the second complaint, the first violation would be a civil violation, which is right now $250, I think it says in here. The second violation will be criminal, in which case we'd have to get a noise meter and check. And once it's criminal, then the first criminal offense would be a class 2 misdemeanor, and the second criminal offense would be a class 1 misdemeanor. Is that what I'm hearing?
I have no issues with that.
Okay.
Now, Robbie, let me ask you this. If your dispatcher gets on the radio to an officer and says, we've got a noise complaint at 1234 Main Street, do they automatically come here first, get the noise meter, and then go down there?
yes, usually.
They don't go down there first and then
You
say,
know,
I
most
have
of
to
the
check
time
it.
in the summer, we had 2 or 3 working at night
Right.
anyway. And, you know, usually one of them will come up here and get the noise meter and check it out, make sure it's all working.
Mhm.
You know, because we have to calibrate it
Right.
before it's used.
Yeah.
And you need to do that in a, you know, quieter environment.
Right.
So usually they'll do that, then they take it out and go to the scene.
So nobody goes to the scene until they have the noise meter ready to go?
I wouldn't say that, you know, I mean, because our normal thing is we're gonna get there as fast as, you know, we can.
Respond.
Yeah.
But to me, that gives them the opportunity to turn, oh, we weren't doing anything.
And that does happen at times, you know, it does happen that we get there at times and, you know, they saw a, you know, police car pull up or, you know, whatever. Doesn't happen all the time, you know, but I'm sure it happens some, you know.
Okay.
So hypothetical, somebody complains, you go there, you check it out. 45 minutes later, you got another person, they've not stopped, I guess, in 45-minute period. Another person complains. How do you normally handle that?
If it's in violation both times, then the first time they get the warning. When we go back the second time, then they get a summons.
So it's
Under our current.
two new, I mean, you know, in other words,
It's 2 separate incidents
2 separate incidents, you would give them a warning
for the first.
for,
If they're in violation, they
Each
get a
time.
warrant, no, they get a warrant for the first, I mean, a warning for the first time.
uh-huh,
And then if we get called back again and they're in violation again, then they get a summons.
regardless of who.
Regardless, it doesn't have to be the same complainant.
But it
Yeah.
could be.
But it could be.
Right.
But as long as it's the same
Noise coming from
noise
someplace.
coming from the same place,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Same source.
same source.
Yeah, I noticed, Mike, on this, you know, I know we're picking up our own decibel levels and such. I think ours is 65 and 55, and this is the same for residential, but they have none for commercial. Do we like that
Oh.
decibel range for commercial, that we have
Actually,
now?
if you look at the chart, and I did this for the August meeting, it's up there. If you look, restaurants have exemptions for 80 during the day and 75 at night in Virginia Beach, which I wouldn't recommend given our current situation. I think
Okay,
the
I see
committee,
that, yeah.
the committee in August, I think, felt that our decibel levels were right down the middle. I think was what I
Right.
heard in August.
Yeah, I'd like to see our decimal levels remain the same.
Yeah.
Now, something to also consider is your hours. The hours there is, that's, daytime is considered 7 a.m. to midnight, and night is considered midnight to 7 a.m. You know, you could always cut that off sooner if you didn't want to go that long.
Well, this one goes till 10, doesn't it, at night?
This one goes to 10. Our current ordinance
Goes to midnight.
goes, day is defined 7 a.m. to midnight, and
Mhm.
night is midnight to 7 a.m. So,
I think
If
if
you wanna
somebody's
cut
got
that
to
off
go to
sooner,
work
that-
next day in the morning at 5 o'clock or whatever, and you got somebody at 12 midnight still banging, you know, I think that should be tightened up a little bit myself. Or the hours at least, not necessarily the.
Robbie and I were
the
discussing
decibel
that
level.
this afternoon, and Robbie tells me that at one point, and we're not sure if they still have it, but Ocean City had a rule where there was no outside entertainment after 7 p.m. They just cut it off. You got to go indoors.
That's in their ordinance. You know,
I doubt
I
this.
understand.
I bet you that's changed by then.
It may have, I'm not sure.
And what your definition of indoors is.
Right.
That might be what was changed.
I'm happy with the way we got everything set
No,
up.
no outdoor entertainment.
That's what I meant,
Yeah.
outdoor.
Yeah.
Except with what, you know, about the civil and criminal and the 90-day. You know, given the amount that we have and basically, you know, we're trying to rein in some people from breaking this ordinance. I think that's pretty tight, in my opinion.
Is there, and still, we're trying to get direction on this.
Yeah.
The lower threshold for the civil violation. You want to address that, or stay with the threshold that we have, which is using the decibel meter?
I would say stay with the thresholds we have.
Well, let me correct that. If it's gonna be a civil, are we gonna go with like Virginia Beach and just say, hey,
That's my
You know,
question.
that's gonna be our interpretation
In a civil
as the
matter,
police department?
because as I said, they have a different threshold for civil and criminal. So
Understood.
if we're going to insert a civil violation here, do we want to remain with the same criminal threshold, or do we want to lower that for the civil violation?
Give me an example.
Well, just like from what they're saying, if it's plainly audible,
Right.
you know, if, you know, Mike, let's say, has a party around his pool, you know, and the neighbor calls from across the street and says, you know, their noise is keeping me up, I can't get to sleep. And we go there and we can hear plainly that, you know, it is loud enough, then, you know, that's what we're gonna go over there and say.
Right.
You know, and the first time, we'll give them a warning.
Right.
If we have to go back, then the second time, then
Civil.
that's a civil, civil
Right.
offense. Yeah, and we'll take that.
And if you go back a third time,
Then we'll
there's
go with the meter.
criminal.
I mean, there's a lot of things you can do there. You can make it criminal, you can give them another civil penalty and up the fine, but there's a bunch of things you can do, but that's, again, we're trying to get direction here, because the next thing we want to do is we want to write an ordinance and give it to you to read and see, and then we can go through it.
Or tweak this ordinance.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's-
right, yeah, we're going to tweak our system, and then we're going to go through it and ask you, what do you think, what changes you want to make, what tweaks you want to do, and it may take us a couple months to that, come up with something.
My opinion is, and I want to hear from them, obviously, is that we leave everything in our ordinance the way it is, with the exception of, we go to you once, you get your warning. We go to you the second time,
90-day one.
yeah, 90-day warning. We go to you the second time within 90 days, you get a civil penalty. If we go to you again within that 90 days, you're getting a criminal penalty.
And I think the one thing I struggle with, the civil and the criminal having different thresholds is, at least with the decibel meter, there's no misinterpretation. That
Right.
everybody, you got the reading, whereas if you do it just based on hearing, everybody's hearing is different.
That's right, yeah.
So I don't think I'd be in favor of not using the decibel meter.
Me either.
In order
I
to
would,
do
I'm
that,
assuming you're using the decimal meter
for all of it.
for all of it.
Now,
Yeah, if that's what you all,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's
Oh, it's,
more consistent.
yeah, and it's in black and white.
Especially
basically.
since we're increasing what the ultimate
Right.
penalties can be.
Right.
I think it's important that we do that.
Yeah, I just assume you would use that anyway.
I'll go back now to the city attorney who was explaining this at a council meeting. The purpose of them adopting a civil penalty was that it was so daggone hard to prosecute someone under the criminal statute, because it was very difficult to get the meter out, get there in time,
Yeah.
get it recorded, and
Understood.
verify the violation, and then first time's a warning, and then second time, there were hardly any prosecutions under their current ordinance, and they kept having all this noise. So they lowered the threshold, made it a civil penalty, and said now we have some control over at least trying to control the noise that we have, because it's much easier to give someone a violation. Now, they didn't dare lower the threshold under a criminal because of the Supreme Court case, the Tanner case. They knew courts were going to throw it out, so they made it civil and lowered the threshold so they could at least have some control over the noise they were having. And that's what the Virginia Beach attorney told the council, that they would at least have some control, something the police could do, because they were having no prosecutions under their current ordinance, or very little prosecutions.
The only difference I think we would have is, number one, you're talking about 7 miles
Right.
from the furthest end. And I think, so I think that's the difference. And the other thing is too, if they get charged with a misdemeanor, especially the, was it class one?
Two.
Even if they don't get convicted, they're probably gonna go out and have to get an attorney to make sure they don't get convicted. So one way or another, financially, they're impacted.
And that's where I'm getting to. I think if these guys have got to go to somebody's place 3 times,
Mhm.
then you darn right you should have some kind of consequences.
Yeah, I agree. It should be teeth. I mean, maybe we could try it this way, and if we see that we're getting the same thing,
Yeah.
then we could do the same thing. We could adopt a civil penalty at that point, if we needed to. The one thing too, I've got to agree with Jay on one thing, is, the whole 12 p.m. thing.
Yeah.
Most people are in bed before that. I think something 10, 11 o'clock probably isn't out of the realm of fairness there.
You have so many residential areas
Sure.
that are close to these, is my concern, where people get up early, 5 o'clock, they may go out and work on the water, they may go over to the base or whatever. I just,
And that's
yeah.
unfortunately, we're not a planned community. The community developed
Right.
by itself, and we have, anyone who's lived here, we have commercial areas that immediately abut residential areas.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen that over and over, especially with the noise ordinance. You have folks living in a home next to a restaurant that's having entertainment, and all the things that go with it, noise in the parking lot, noise here, noise there, that sort of thing, people parking everywhere, and they want some relief, but the fact is they bought a home next to a commercial neighborhood or a commercial area, and there's not much that, at this point, the town can do about that.
Right.
Although ideally, we would have never zoned it that way. There's not much at this point we can do with it.
But I would be in favor of some type of change there from, something a little earlier than midnight, because, like you said, most people are getting up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work next day.
Well,
That are year-round residents.
That's why it drew my attention to the draft that's here from Virginia Beach. I think 10 p.m. is a fair time.
I think it's a great place to start anyway.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I don't know. 11 I can be good with. I don't know. 10, I don't know. Yeah, just see how it works.
And if it, doesn't work, it just like,
Yeah,
You can figure we'll have council's input on this anyway.
yeah.
Yeah,
Full
again,
council's input.
as you know, this is a recommendation of full council. so-
Right.
anything else, Mike?
No, so we will go back to the original ordinance, and Robbie and I will work together on this, but we'll go back to our current ordinance, and we'll tune it up to incorporate the things that you've mentioned here. And I'll send everybody an advanced copy, and we can, at our next scheduled meeting, Chairman, you want to have another meeting, we can review that and tell us if there's anything you'd like to tweak again, and then maybe see if you're ready for a recommendation.
Okay. Yep. All right. You good on that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anything else? Have any other comments?
I have no Mr. Chairman.
All right, that being said, I guess we're entertaining a motion to close.
So move.
Second.
We got a motion to close and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye.